You're watching the Transnet podcast. We're coming to you from the Investing in Africa Mining Indaba 2026. And I have with me here a very auspicious guest. The chair of the Transnet Group, Dr Andile Sangqu, is my guest here at the Transnet podcast. Mhlekazi, welcome.
Thank you very much, Ayabonga. It's very nice to be here at the Transnet stand this afternoon.
Thank you very much. A busy time for you, I would imagine, here at the Mining Indaba. Many of your customers are here. Just some reflections on your end about this convening and the people you've had a chance to meet here.
Look, I think that just the idea of the Indaba itself, it's a very great idea in the sense that you get to get a better feel of the tempo and the sentiment in terms of the mood in the economy, particularly the mining industry as a sector. And you also get to interact with a number of players, be it suppliers, the customers, and also even the regulators, and also even other people from other countries and their view on South Africa in particular. I've also participated in some few panel discussions. And it's really that kind of interaction and interface just to get a sense of the mood. And my overall sense is that there's a level of positivity, but there's still some bit of tentativeness, that positivity, but it's not really translating into things that are tangible. One of the meetings I've just had now, I was talking to someone who was saying to me that in the mining indabas gone by, one of the things that was happening quite a lot was people signing deals at the indaba. And he was saying that for some odd reason this year he has not experienced that. And he was also commenting that there are just over 13,000 people that are here. So I think maybe there's still some bit of tentativeness. And I'm getting a sense that maybe there are some areas of policy that still needs to be settled and ironed out. And perhaps there's still some more water that needs to go under that bridge. And I think if that has happened, or if that would happen at some point, we'll see all of this momentum that is starting to build, being converted into that, which I think it will sort of open up a new chapter and bring in its own energy and its own dynamics.
I would imagine, some of the tentativeness around the policy debate also has to do with something you are in the middle of and thick of, which relates to the reforms that are underway in the sector that Transnet operates in as a lead firm. Some thoughts on that? Have people been asking you about that to say, you guys have given the right signals in the market regarding your own reform path? Where are you?
I think it's been quite an interesting challenge for us in the sense that if you look at the pace, the scale, and the urgency of reform the world over, it has taken a long time to be able to embed that and provide the certainty and the clarity that is required if we take into account just global best practice. But what we are experiencing here is that everybody's saying to us, there's no time. The economy needs these reforms like yesterday. And so we have to work with speed. And I think we are not doing enough. We could do more, but not entirely that everything is in our hands. But our resolve and our commitment and our determination remains very unequivocal. We're very clear, we're very resolute that this is something that is necessary for a variety of reasons. We need to unlock the funding of the infrastructure. And for us to be able to do that, we then need to try and find the right kind of investment frameworks and a policy clarity that will be able to attract the investments. So, but here's the but. The time that is required, the effort, the skills that is required to do that, it's not something that you can do in a hurry. You are likely to make mistakes, but also if you are likely to open yourself up to all sorts of legal disputes and so on. So there has to be a bit of rigor, and thoroughness and steadfastness that has to go into that. And but also it's a new area, for a lot of people. So we have to build a critical mass of skills to venture into that, and I think that perhaps the quantity of the skills that is required to do that, and maybe it's not the way it is supposed to be. That's the first thing. But there also has to be a bit of deliberateness about opening up the spaces to new players. And that space also include new transformational players. So there has to be that kind of thinking that goes into to say, through this reform, how can we make sure that those that historically have been marginalized, as we open up the space, we create those kinds of opportunities in terms of business, in terms of participation, in terms of value chain. But these have to be driven from a policy point of view.
Yeah.
Just to step back a little bit and say that, having said all of that, there are good proof points in terms of clear deliverables about what has been initiated, what has been done, that signals a very clear message that despite the magnitude of the task, despite the fact that there's a lot of impatience, because certainly we are moving from a place of vulnerability, which does not give us the luxury of time. Because in some countries, when they were instituting these reforms, there was sort of some semblance of stability. They were not facing the kind of crisis.
You're a noisy bunch as well.
Yeah. But maybe rightfully so, because if we drive this reform at sufficient momentum, speed, and pace, it unlocks so many opportunities. We have this tagline at Transnet that says, when Transnet works, South Africa thrives. So because we are sort of the heartbeats of the nation, so to speak, to the sooner we can ramp up, the speed of change, the sooner we can be able to do that. But my last point is this. There are other players as well that we work with. One of them is the regulator. Yes. That also need to ramp up, make sure that it understands. We also need to cultivate relationships, build trust, build equity in those relationships, but also to make sure that there's an alignment in terms of the strategic intent. Similarly with the shareholders as well. We also need to align on that. So when I'm talking about shareholder, we have DOT on the one hand, we've got National Treasury.
Yeah.
And we can't just assume that there's homogeneity in terms of how all of these shareholders, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of investment that has to be done. There's a lot of listening. There's a lot of accommodating. There's a lot of trade-offs that need to be done to be able to pull all of that together. That's a journey. You can't get it wrong. But there's a little bit of patience that is required to do that. But on the other hand, you hear a lot of funders saying that, we have all these who want to play in the space. We want to fund them, but we are not certain on the following. For example, just give you one of the questions that gets posed to me is that look at the quality and the condition of the rail track, right? And then we have opened up the space to say, well, have new train operators operating in this rail track in this condition, So what happens if we find train operators and the trains derail because of the condition, and these are some of the things that, we need to have these conversations with our own stakeholders, the shareholder, to say, we need to find a mechanism of ramping up the funding, of this infrastructure so that we can accelerate, the level of readiness so that we can create conducive conditions, for us to be able to roll out this at speed and at scale. So these are some of the complexities.
Are you not worried that you may be too hard on yourselves? I ask this because if I look at the freight logistics roadmap the Cabinet adopted in 2023, and I look at the matrix of interventions that were listed there, and I speak to some of the leadership of Transnet, there'd been a decision to set up a railway infrastructure manager. Institutionally, it's been set up. There was a decision to create a transport economic regulator. For all intents and purposes, institutionally, it is being set up. There was a decision around trying to get a network statement out. It seems some headway is happening there. There was a decision to try and get third-party actors to have access. The terms and the parameters of that, if I listen to some of the sessions of this mining Ndawa, it seems progress is being made there. Are we banking those wins, Chair, or is it important to just be hard on yourselves?
Look, I think there are three responses to that. One is that there's nothing wrong with us sitting back, taking notes, and taking stock of what has been done, and reflect on the lessons learned, and build and curate a message that really articulates and give confidence to the markets that there's clarity, there's intentionality, there's deliberateness, all of that. That's very important. And perhaps maybe there's a gap from us in terms of comms and stakeholder management, how we articulate that. So from where I sit, I think we can do better. The second one is that perhaps we need another conversation with all the stakeholders to say, this is what is in the pipeline. Okay. This is what we are thinking about. Take them into the journey, build a level of confidence, give some kind of certainty. Sometimes we are scared to do this, Ayabo. Just the humility to say, we don't have the answers. For now. Yeah. We don't know everything, but we'll be journeying together into this. So I think it's very important how you show up into all of this thing. So, but to answer your question more specifically about to say, are we not hard enough? The answer is no. For the simple reason that capital is mobile. We competing for capital with other jurisdictions, that are moving at a higher pace than us, that are really moving ahead in terms of creating the conducive conditions to attract capital and investment. So that's the first thing. But there's also a window. I mean, we have this conversation in this conference about critical and strategic minerals. And I was talking to you earlier about the fact that there's this tentativeness, and it will remain there. But capital is not going to wait. So to the extent that we continue not providing the certainty, not providing the clarity, not stabilizing our policies, we may be locking ourselves out. So by the time we believe that we are ready, it's like 5 years down the line, it's gone. Yeah. So I don't think that we are being hard on ourselves. It's almost like operating at true speed. You've got to do this, you've got to do this, but at different paces. But I think we're broadly aligned in terms of where we should go. And I think perhaps we should just find ways of fine-tuning our processes to move at a faster speed. But of course, one thing that is holding us back is that this is uncharted territory.
Yes. So in a way, you're writing the playbook.
Precisely, and you don't have the benefits of a prior experience. You say, yeah, but we've done this before. We can learn, we can recultivate and reactivate all of this. We don't have to do. But having said all of that, I think we're doing a great job, even if I had to say so.
So, Chair, the other thing I want to get a handle on, And you made the point earlier that in your engagement, yes, you must engage your suppliers and your customers, but also you have to engage your shareholders in their diverse and varied forms, whether that's the National Treasury or even the Department of Transport. I'm quite keen on your thoughts about how it is that we pursue public-private partnership and whether the regulatory enablers for the kind of partnerships you would want ideally are in place at the moment. And if not, well, what's needed then?
They are not. And attendance is a typical problem where you rush ahead with a policy intent, but then there's a gap
In your instruments.
in the instruments that you lag behind. Then that sort of slows down the momentum, and the speed with which you want to move.
Sure.
Let me give an example. When we were busy finalizing the concession for DCT Pier 2,
Container terminal in Durban.
So one of the things that we have to secure was a departure from the PFMA, which like, for example, private sector partners are unwilling, to be able to invest under that kind of dispensation. They were saying that the Companies Act is just as adequate, which is a very fair request.
So you don't need this additional layer of the
PFMA. But then, even though we are driving these kinds of reform at speed and at scale, you still have these kinds of instruments, that have not been made ready and customized to better support the reform journey. So I'm just using that as a, and probably there's a bit of work that needs to be done to actually scrutinize all of these impediments and remove them. So when we communicate the message about reform and we say we're ready to do business, we provide this kind of certainties to the market. So I think there's some bit of work, but directionally, this is really still.
So if you were given the pen to say, look, on the PFMA, for example, or any other measure that could unlock and take us in the direction envisaged by the policy reform journey, what would some of those be? You've mentioned the PFMA. Any other ones that you've observed in your time here at Transnet?
So one of the things is the time it takes to procure goods and services in the market. There are just so many layers. And when you are trying to drive the kind of operational reform, and of course you have to be competitive. And of course you have to uphold good standards of governance. And of course you have to make sure that there are good controls in place, etc., etc. But some of the time periods that are prescribed, and even if you get it wrong, some of you have to restart all of this thing. So it's not efficient, So I think for me, there needs to be some trade-offs between efficiency and effectiveness, and perhaps streamline this a little bit better. We can save ourselves a lot of time, and it could also even improve our responsiveness. This is the point I want to make. We have to remain competitive. And some of our customers, they operate in other jurisdictions, So they've got a sense of what good looks like. They are exposed to other countries like Australia, how things work, etc., etc. So for us to become a full package, to respond to all of these kinds of things, we need to have an honest conversation amongst ourselves to say, look, this is the path that we are committing ourselves to. Which are some of the parts that we'll then need to make sure that we remove or repeal so that we can just be more agile, better streamlined, etc., without compromising governance, and without also compromising the pursuit of bigger national goals like empowerment and all of that. I do think that there's a space to do all of that. My last point is that some of these policies were formulated at a certain point in time, and so the intent is there, but we need to review the modalities. to say, are they still relevant? Are they still appropriate? Are they well modernized to talk to the realities of our modern times? And I don't think we've done enough of that work, and I think there's more scope, in my view, to do all of that. I hope that answers.
No, I think it does. And maybe just my next question is, there's this perennial worry we have in South Africa that we sometimes don't have the building blocks in place to make good use of favorable price conditions in commodities.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we sometimes not able to make hay while the sun shines, if I could say that proverbially. If you had any message to the people who are here at the Mining Indaba about the ability of Transnet to be part of the answer to how best we make of this commodity boom, and I think for all intents and purposes, indicators are indicating that we are getting into a favorable price cycle, what would that message be?
I think the work that we have done in the last 2.5 years has prepared us to be able to respond and take advantage, to enable our customers to take advantage of the whole. And I just want to cite some key proof points. The level of cooperation and support, thinking together, working together with our customers to try and stabilize the operations, the infrastructure, has cultivated a deep sense of goodwill, that I think will put us in good stead, as we prepare ourselves, for what is we're starting to experience. But also, I think in Transnet itself, there's a new culture, that is being excited by the momentum for change, and everybody wants to be part of the winning solution, and I think that everybody will embrace this kind of restoring the Transnet to its glory days, so to speak. And I think that my sense of the mood on the ground is that we're ready for that, because I think without the people, you won't be able to go far into that. My last point is that we've also prepared ourselves in terms of contracting, with customers, to make sure that we give them the certainty of the volumes that we'll be able to move. And I think from where we sit or stand as a business, that's very important, because you need to blend with clarity. If you know that you have customers have committed to X amount of volumes, then we can be able then to invest in building and supporting the requisite infrastructure and maintaining it to make sure that we're doing that.
Yeah.
If you look at the work that we've done in the ports, as a case in point, it's another demonstration, of our state of readiness, to be able to deal with that. On Friday, I'm traveling, doing a site visit to Saldanha, just again to spend a day just to get a sense of what is being done and how we are preparing ourselves to meet the demands, for iron ore customers and et cetera, et cetera. So I'm getting it's quite a good positive sense that we are of course not where we want to be, but considering the fact that we don't have to just stabilize the infrastructure, but we have to build resilience for the future. I'm quite comfortable about what has been done and what is in store for us in the future. And I think that we're in a much better space than we've ever been. And I think we are beginning to strengthen and consolidate all of the requisite building blocks to make sure that we build a resilient organization.
Chair, I end off where I started.
Yep.
On this reform journey, those customers who've locked in their commitment with you, what are the signals that they must expect on this journey? What are the signposts on the reform journey that they must expect over the coming months? And I would argue over right through the next 24 months.
Okay. Before I answer that question, but I think it would be very remiss if we don't deal with some of the perennial risks.
Yes.
Cable theft.
Still an issue.
They are still very, it's not like we're not doing something about it, but it's not at the level, where we would like it to be. And I think if we can ramp up, our efforts, in that regard, it will quicken, this momentum that we are building, and it will answer all of those questions that you're asking about customers in terms of what to expect. So there are still some few dependencies, if you like, that will take us there. The second one is where I also started and say the reliability, operability, and dependability of the rail infrastructure. It's still a big impediment. The team is committed, but we do need a bit of a financial horsepower to give us the requisite push. But barring all of those things, I think we are doing enough, and we are the engagements with customers are there, and our style and our posture is that we are very open, we are very transparent, and we are very honest. Even if we will not be able to do something, we have dialogues with our customers. So it may not sound as if it's like a tangible thing. Like when you're asking me this question, that you would say, well, number one, this is it. But I think that we have built a kind of a framework in terms of stakeholder engagement, in terms of communication, in terms of listening. Customers are collaborating a lot more with us, even investing, in rebuilding some of this infrastructure. So I like to believe that we're in a very good position, but you need to give these things a little bit of time to work through themselves into the system. I think our biggest challenge is to be complacent as an organization. We have not won. And I like what the late President Nelson Mandela used to say, is that after a few climbs, you need to pause, and still a view and watch and enjoy the vistas, but you must not linger long, because there's still some more hills to climb. And I think that's probably one of the things that would concern me a little bit, that let's just not think that we have won yet. But there's been a little bit of respite, and also even with some of the commodities like manganese and so on, where there have been some favorable prices and so on. So those kind of tailwinds, have helped the volumes and some of the global demands and so on. So from where I would say, look, Transnet is working, and as long as it continues to work, South Africa would thrive.
The journey continues. I hope you have enough course or enough mpago for the journey. But Chair, thank you very much. Really appreciate it, Dr. Sangqu. Thanks.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you.